After 9/11, could you conceive of a United States senator rising in defense of people who attack flight crews and try to enter the cockpit of planes in flight? Well, that's exactly what Marco Rubio and 7 Republican senators are now saying, and they have put their support for those criminals on American airliners in writing in a letter to the Attorney General opposing the creation of a no-fly list for passengers who engage in the vicious violence we have been seeing on American airliners. In their letter to the Attorney General, they actually say, we strongly condemn any violence toward airline workers. They say that in a letter where they then defend the people who commit the violence against airline workers. Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, Rick Scott, James Lankford, Kevin Kramer, Cynthia Lummis, and Joe Hoven all support the criminals in the sky and those criminals' right to reboard any aircraft they want to board after they have been convicted of savagely beating flight crews. Some of the people who have savagely beaten flight crews have actually brought down those planes. Cross-country flights have been forced into emergency landings in the middle of the country thanks to the criminals who Marco Rubio is now defending. The CEO of Delta Airlines wrote a letter to the Attorney General asking for the creation of a national no-fly list that could be shared by all of the airlines to identify the people who have attacked flight crews and the people who have forced down planes that are then boarded by police officers rushing onto those planes, rushing down the aisles to drag the criminals off the planes as children and other victimized passengers watch. Sarah Nelson, the president of the Flight Attendants Union, says our flights are under attack by a small number of people, and it has to stop. Just this past week, an out-of-control passenger tried to open aircraft doors and charge the flight deck. We've been punched, kicked, spit on, and sexually assaulted. This puts everyone at risk and disrupts the safety of flight. Every single one of the senators who signed this letter knows full well what is at stake if we leave a gap in aviation safety and security. The Republican senators tried to pretend that their letter to the Attorney General is that, in their letter to the Attorney General, that the new terrorists in our skies are simply engaging in legitimate political discourse, as they would call it, about masks. Sarah Nelson says this is not about masks, and the worst attacks have nothing to do with masks. You're either for protecting crew and passengers from these attacks, or you're against. Joining us now is Democratic Congresswoman Val Demings of Florida, a member of the House Judiciary Committee. She served as an impeachment manager in the first impeachment trial of Donald Trump, and she is running for United States Senate in Florida. Congresswoman Demings, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I want to begin with your reaction to this letter by Marco Rubio and 7 Republicans, in effect defending the criminals on our airliners.
Lawrence, it's good to be back with you. And look, I was assigned to the Orlando International Airport during 9/11 as a police commander. It is a day that I certainly will never forget, and none of us should ever forget, but perhaps Marco Rubio and his friends have forgotten. You know, this is yet again an example of Marco Rubio picking and choosing who he thinks should follow the rules or obey the law. Perhaps they would have better served our nation if they had written the DOJ asking that the persons at all levels who were involved in January 6th be held accountable. I've talked to airline employees. I've talked to the police officers that have had to respond to some of the disruption and violence that have occurred in our nation's airport. The employees don't deserve it. Matter of fact, the police officers who have to respond to these dangerous situations don't deserve it. And I think it's just a shameful day. But this is an example of a lack of leadership coming out of the U.S. Senate involving Marco Rubio.
And you know Marco Rubio is going to be running against you as the law and order Republican, as all these Republicans do. But he is not supporting the police officers who have to rush into those fuselages in those very tight quarters to try to drag out one of these violent criminals. He's not going to help keep those criminals off those planes so those police officers can be engaged in other protective services.
And, really, Lawrence, you make a good point. Perhaps he should have written a letter to the DOJ really recognizing the officers that have been put in this situation to deal with these unruly, dangerous, and sometimes violent passengers. But yet again, this is an example of Marco Rubio doing what he feels is in his best interest, and certainly not for the police officers that he claims to support so much, or the other innocent people, the airline employees, or the airport employees who are involved in these situations.
And before writing this letter, Marco Rubio has said that in his campaign against you, he's obviously worried about your candidacy. He said that Val Demings has made it harder for police to do their jobs. What have you done to make it harder for police to do their jobs?
Well, what we have learned is that Marco Rubio will make his mouth say anything. The bottom line is, Lawrence, I served 27 years as a law enforcement officer. I worked at every level, every rank. When I was putting my sons to bed at night and putting on my bulletproof vest to go to work, Marco Rubio was home sleeping in his bed. During this critical situation in our nation, we need real leadership. We need real crisis managers. Marco Rubio has demonstrated that he does not have the courage or the ability to manage. I do. If there are listeners out there who want to support my campaign, valdemings.com.
Congresswoman Val Demings, thank you very much for joining us tonight on this important